Welcome to my world history notes, where I read from the book I wrote to teach homeschoolers world history. A Bible believer looks at world history, which you can find on lulu.com, amazon.com, at the Bible Baptist bookstore. Just follow me here. So we're talking about World War II, the early days, and we're going to go back to the Western Front, and just want to go over what notes I made, and maybe I'll make some corrections, some new things that I've learned. Two German army groups crossed the Belgian and Dutch frontiers. Now, remember, these two countries, which have significant armies, had declared themselves neutral. German paratroopers dropped into the center of the Netherlands, aka Holland, and paralyzed the country. In Belgium, glider and paratroop forces neutralized the powerful Fort Ibn Email. The Albert Canal, which it defended, was easily crossed. Excuse me. The early successes of Hitler terrified the capitals of Paris and London. Prime Minister Chamberlain, who had declared, quote, peace in our time, after giving Hitler everything he wanted, resigned to permit Winston Churchill to lead coalition government against the German juggernaut. Churchill was the darling of the moneyed power brokers. He had been a visitor to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange on the fateful day in October 1929 that the stock market crashed, and was known to have spent time with the great power broker Bernard Baruch, according to FDR's son-in-law Curtis Dahl. Holland fell within a few days, and the German army ran head-on into the French Seventh Army and drove them back to Antwerp, Belgium. The Dutch, that's people who live in the Netherlands, which is also Holland, are all called Dutch. The Dutch Queen, and her government escaped to England. While waiting for the Dutch surrender, the Luftwaffe destroyed the business section of Rotterdam. The remaining Dutch caretaker government submitted to the complete surrender demands of Hitler's mighty army. Belgium fell in spite of the Belgian army being supported by elements of the French army and the British Expeditionary Force. The German army was threatening their left flank, and the center of the French army behind them was being destroyed, however. At the same time, German army units were chewing up Belgium and Holland. Other units were moving through the difficult terrains of the Ardennes forest. The French, not thinking that the Germans would dare attempt that route, had left their weakest elements in the Stenay Gap area near the Meuse River, where the great forest was watched only by cavalry. Cavalry being brushed aside, German units forged on. Very accurate French artillery was eliminated as a threat by dive bombing attacks. Despite desperate efforts by the gallant French forces, Guderian's tank corps smashed everything in their path. Tanks, accompanied by Stuka dive bombers, exploded along a 50-mile front, smashing everything in a drive toward the English Channel, having performed an in-run around the worthless Maginot Line. Just as an aside, just keep in mind the French did have better tanks than many of the German tanks. They just were not prepared for the entry point. And some accidental things happen. You have to study it very closely, that brilliant German commanders took advantage of. Many times, German tank units would extend far beyond their infantry support. But it was an overwhelming. It was just a lot of things happening that went their way. The only French commander to have any success was General Charles de Gaulle's tank division that forced the Germans to retreat 3 times. Dive bombers and counterattacks finally drove him back. German armor had now completely split the Allied forces, severing communications with the British Expeditionary Force's base port of Cherbourg. Now, while the French to the south tried to hold the line, the rest were being pinned against the sea. The German army wheeled northward, and efforts to stop the attack were smashed by Erwin Rommel's panzer tanks. Belgium officially surrendered, and Churchill ordered the British Navy to evacuate the British Expeditionary Force at the port of Dunkirk. Incredibly, Hitler ordered a stop to the advance, which gave the British chance to evacuate. He had made the statement that it was not his intention to destroy Britain, and I read quotes where he said he admired the British Empire. Perhaps this was a reason for the amazing stop order. I don't know. There's a lot of I read some books from the German point of view about translated about what actually happened almost moment by moment, and there's different reasons that are given, so it's not conclusive. The Luftwaffe pounded the Dunkirk perimeter, however, and Hitler rescinded his stop order. 850 vessels of every shape and size, manned mostly by civilian volunteers, aided in an amazing exodus. With 8 days, more than 338,000 British, French, and Belgian soldiers were evacuated. The Luftwaffe was challenged by the powerful and daring Royal Air Force, who stopped most of their efforts at strafing the orderly evacuation. General Harold Alexander, commander of Britain's rear guard on the last night, personally walk the beaches to make sure the last living British soldier had embarked before he got into a boat. The heroic French soldiers who were defending the evacuation were overwhelmed the next morning by the Germans. This was called the Battle of Flanders. The German operation is called ruthless and efficient by historians. I would say that facts that I've learned since that I first wrote this show that there was a lot of luck is involved in this success. Some of them claim that Hitler's stop order was not an act of mercy, but was the result of a plea from his Luftwaffe commander, Goering, to allow his air force to administer the final kill. The French high command was indecisive, and the British and French rarely agreed on any move. The French forces were focused on supporting the Maginot Line, which was idiotic, but no one can say that the French were not incredibly brave. For the French First Army, defending the evacuation at Dunkirk, fought with no hope, with their comrades in arms were being evacuated and they fought to the end. And remember, France had helped beat Germany in World War One, but lost 2 million people. So this is not a country that's going to take war. It's kind of war weary. So anyway, the events of May were concluded with German victory. Now we'll talk about how the Germans regrouped and what happened after that next. I just hope that you'll study world history, study these events, and come to your own conclusions. I don't care if you disagree with me, as long as you're studying or have studied it. You probably know, if you're a big student of World War II, you probably know a lot more than I do. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you, as much as I did, I really love this. And we'll talk again soon.